Hello, everybody. Welcome to Instrumental Breakthroughs, psychedelic origin stories of your favorite rock and roll superheroes. I'm your host, Daniel Shankin. I'm also the founder of Tam Psychedelic Integration, which is a community dedicated to transformation, health, education, and support. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk about psychedelic integration services. We are hosted today by Brian Markowitz of Deadhead Land. Hello, everybody on Deadhead Land. So thank you so much, and support Brian at patreon.com/deadheadland. Also, thank you to Skylar, who's running our tech, and Skylar works with a company called livestreamremote.com that does all manners of live streaming. And so those are the ads. Oh, one more ad. We are having an event in 2 weeks called the Tam Psychedelic Integration Jam, which is going to be a lot of fun. We have about 100 speakers, musicians, artists, and the like, talking about sort of like a crash course masterclass in psychedelic preparation, psychedelic integration. And you can see that if you go to psychedelicintegration.family, which I think is a great web domain. I'm surprised it wasn't taken. I'm really happy to have my guest today, our guest today, Alex, who I know from Terrapin Crossroads. I've seen him. It'd almost be interesting if I could count the number of times I've seen you. I've definitely seen you more than Jerry at this point. Well, just, proximity and time, you know how it is. But so a multi-instrumentalist, most of the time when I would see you, you were playing the drums, just a mainstay at the Terrapin Family Band. You had another band called Colonel and the Mermaids, and it was just, a really solid, stable, rhythmic mainstay of the Bay Area psychedelic Grateful Dead community. And I'm really happy to have this opportunity to check in and also let the people, probably from the Bay Area who are watching on Deadhead Land, to check in and see what's happening with you these days.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we do like sort of the regular stuff, one of the things I'm curious about, we were talking before, you mentioned the difference between Doomsday and Armageddon.
Oh boy.
And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind just define. We were talking about like, where do you live in a time of climate change and things like that, and civil unrest and the like. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind defining those terms for us.
Doomsday, I guess, can be any. It's like a giant umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Armageddon, I see as like a nuclear scenario more so.
Okay.
At least that's how I see it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Those are just two options that I am trying to make an effort not to think about too much.
Right. Well,
put that out there.
It's kind of like don't think about a white polar bear.
Yeah. Why is that?
It was just a weird thought experiment. There's some sort of game. It's the white polar bear game, and you lose when you think about a white polar bear. Right. And the game is like, and you can play it with somebody who's tripping. It's really fun. It's just the more you tell them not to think about it, the more it's impossible not to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, and so what do you do instead? So trying not to think about impending disaster and doom. How do you fill your time? How do you train your mind to go elsewhere?
I'm really still trying to work on that.
Right.
Like that's a tough one. I notice when I get in certain patterns, actually when I smoke a lot of pot, I go mm-hmm. there. And so sometimes I just have to take a break and clear my head out. So it's like this weird little roller coaster ride where I go back and forth between overindulging maybe, and that leads mm-hmm. to some thoughts that I just can't shake, just anxiety type stuff. And then I know that it's time to pump the brakes, but I don't really know if there's something that I've fully figured out, to be honest.
Right. And so it's interesting, when we first started talking before we got up here, I was like, oh, cool, you can tell me what's happening in Marin because I left, but it turned out that you even left before I did.
Yeah.
And so what has it been like in LA musically?
Well, it's been great. There's a really good community down here. Obviously, the music is this is where it happens, but
Mm-hmm.
as far as like a community that I can relate to, and I have friends down here, it's been beautiful because 7-8 years of Terrapin, it was scary to leave that and not
Mm-hmm.
know what was going to happen down here. And still, I guess, it's been a year of a pandemic, so there's really not knowing still. But yeah, I just I'm finding my people. It's been really, really great.
Nice. Have you found a venue that compares?
Well, no, because it's been shut down.
Right.
I moved in the summer before COVID, and then I went on tour in the fall and came home, and then winter, like I came home in March, right before the shutdowns, or maybe February.
Mm-hmm.
So I was home for, less than a month before things shut down.
Got it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Everything,
So,
there is stuff like in the desert in Joshua Tree. There's a venue, Pappy and Harriet's, that I did 2 or 3 shows with Chris Robinson called Los Hermanos Cosmico. It was a band with Chris and the guys from the Beechwood Sparks, which are a great band. And so like there was like a time where things were kind of open in certain areas, but definitely not in LA proper. LA's been pretty
right.
strict.
Yeah, man. So one of the things that we're really curious about on the show is what we call psychedelic origin stories. We're sort of very curious about how, plant medicines or sacred science influences people's creativity. And, the question is that we're exploring is, does it sort of put them on a path and point them in a direction? And then does kind of their music, their art help them to kind of explore and flesh that out over time?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
Right. Well, we're gonna start with, well, so the question is, we'll take it in bits.
Yeah, please.
So I'm curious, maybe one of your, well, were you playing music first or doing psychedelics first? Which hit the radar?
Well, I've played music since I was very young, but not in a
Mm-hmm.
not in a professional way. My first like real gig was Terrapin. So
Mm.
I went up until I was 21. I started at 21 at Terrapin. And then actually that was I had done salvia. I remember on my 18th, like I was 18, I turned 18 the year before senior year. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was able to go into the smoke shop and get salvia. And I remember on senior ditch day, that's what I did. We got salvia, and that was like my first psychedelic experience. But I still don't feel like salvia is such a weird one that I don't really put that almost into the same category. Although,
Salvia is a weird one.
yeah. But that was like my first at around 18. And then around 21, I started taking mushrooms a little bit more. And I had my first, like, I think 2CB, well, no, mushrooms was the first one. And then experimenting with 2CB and acid. And that was like the first like year or two of Terrapin. That was kind of like my introduction to that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you were pretty much, you were playing. And how did you start playing? Like, how did that kind of happen? How did you end up at Terrapin?
Well, my dad's a musician, not
Mm-hmm.
so much a professional one, although he played in bands off and on. And then he ended up joining the army, and then a different life kind of, he went a different way. And my grandfather was a jazz musician on my mom's side. He played trumpet, and successfully. He was like in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm pretty sure he was in the union, the musicians union. So he'd get gigs doing that. And then on my dad's side, my grandmother was in like opera, and she did stuff like that. So it was something that I just grew up around. And then I played for fun. You know, I had bands in high school and stuff, but none of them were really, you know, I wasn't doing it for money or anything. It was just for fun.
Sure.
Yeah. And when Terrapin came around, that was like my first time that I ever got paid to play. And I grew up with the Leshes, so that's kind of how that fell into place. I was playing.
Sure.
They opened Terrapin. Jill kind of, through being friends with my mom, knew the place I was at in my life where I wasn't really doing much. And I think she just kind of offered me a job to come work there. It was a nice thing to do, and it got me out of the rut I was in. So that's how that happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so these first experiences, like this first experience with 2CB, so that's a weird one too.
Yeah.
How do you want, and not to talked about quite as much as, like, you know, everybody's talking about mushrooms these days. Will you tell us a little bit about your 2CB experience?
Yeah, 2CB was like the first kind of, I guess what you would call a breakthrough. And I remember the group of people I was with, it was like, we moved into a house together. We all worked at Terrapin, we all played music together. And the first night we moved in was the first night I took 2CB, and it was like, I'm sorry about that. It was about, I don't know exactly, you know, I don't know the dose I took or whatever. It was, you know, in those like early psychedelic experiences, it's so like innocent. You don't really know. And I think that's the best. I wish I could go back to not knowing. And so I don't know how much I took. And then I remember staring at the wall and just kind of going into it and swirling in. And it was cool. It's a weird one. How do I turn these things off? Can you hear those beeps? I'm sorry.
I can.
Let me turn them off.
That's good. You reminded me to hit my do not disturb as well.
How do you do that on a computer?
In the upper right hand corner, there's 3 lines.
Oh yeah.
And then you scroll up a little and it'll say do not disturb.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, that was it. That was my kind of like first real, not just looking at like the walls waving, but kind of like actually breaking into something that was a little more involved. And it was a weird one. Every time I took 2CB, I still kind of feel it. Like when I think about it, I can feel it. It's just like this weird kind of, I just want to go in, like, I can't really explain it. But that's just what it did to my body. And I'm getting kind of weird and squirrely thinking about it, but.
Did you ever play music while on it?
Yeah, I think so. But the thing with 2CB for me was that it's like, it was kind of an uncomfortable one. So like, you know, it was psychedelic, but it wasn't the most like peaceful psychedelic thing that I could think to do. It kind of made me more want to, I don't really know. It was it's a weird one. And I did it, I don't know how many times. And I started to not feel as comfortable each time I did it. I started to feel like I shouldn't do it anymore, which is something that I try to listen to.
Right. And then, you know, eventually you listen.
Yeah.
DMT is like that with me.
Really?
Yeah, those elves told me. And some people said maybe the elves are lying, but maybe they are. But yeah, the elves told me not to come back.
That one.
What's that?
Maybe you don't want to test that one, you know, if they're lying.
Well, I did. I waited many, many years. And then some came around that somebody was like, you know, this is the really good stuff. Like, this is better than any of the stuff you've had before. And I was like, okay. And I did it after many years. And the first thing they said was, we thought we told you never to come back.
Oh, man.
And I was like, come on, it's been like 10 years. And they were like, that time moves different. Time doesn't mean anything here. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I won't do it anymore. And they were like, well, we have you for another 3 minutes. And then I was like, I'm here for another 3 minutes. Do you have any advice for me? And they were like, do more cardio. And I
Wow.
was like, well, that's not very spiritual. They were like, yeah,
Sure.
yeah, you're fine there. You need to do more cardio.
Yeah.
And then they were like, here's another 90 seconds of sacred geometry. And then they spit me back out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's something to listen to.
Yeah.
The fact that that's like a pretty profound thing. More cardio.
More cardio, less DMT. I could make a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is one of the peaceful ones that you do get along with? What would you consider an ally?
Well, mushrooms always make me feel very like tired and peaceful, and I just want to like melt.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, like I don't know, it's been a long time because I think I was just maybe doing a little too much for my body. I was around people that were able to do it as much or even continue to do it after I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
But I hit a point where I think I was doing too much of everything, and it just is mushrooms is started to get weird, and I had like a couple bad ones where they started to get more and more uncomfortable, and then one day I just had a bad experience. And
Yeah.
since then I haven't done them, but I've taken acid a few times since, and it's been fine. But I just, there's something in my body that's like, or in my mind that's kind of in this place where I don't feel like I need it, but also
Mm-hmm.
there's times where I feel like it's exactly what I need. That's exactly what I've been needing, is like one solid, full religious trip. And
Mm-hmm.
that'll kind of help me get through the past like fog of psychedelics that I've been in. So it's this
Mm-hmm.
kind of weird catch-22 with me where I don't really know if I'm supposed to do more, or if it's like if my body's telling me you got it, like you need to
Mm-hmm.
chill and work on the things that we told you to work on.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, there was a lot in there, but
Yeah.
so this is the stuff that I'm curious about. The working on the stuff that we told you to work on. That's sort of our definition of integration. And so I'm curious if you'd be willing to share some of that stuff with us. Kind of
Yeah.
like do cardio.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely probably one of them. The problem is I haven't been listening very well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's taken me a while to kind of like decipher it. I think I have bad social anxiety, and one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that psychedelics didn't really help me with was social anxiety. It kind of made me go
Mm-hmm.
further away.
Sure.
So I've tried, I mean, it was really difficult for me to try and figure out, like things got so uncomfortable for me that I really was kind of forced to like think about, okay, like what is going on here? So that's something I've been trying to work on, trying to
Mm-hmm.
just be okay with myself. That's like the biggest one that I'm not even close to accomplishing yet. But
Right.
yeah, there's something that I just don't like. I don't love myself, and that's like part of that is like a self-loathing kind of artist thing, I think, that like drives my art.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a crutch that I rely on. And when I get really down on myself, or like just down in general, it's like it's almost like an emotion that I'm addicted to, because it usually like spawns a creative burst where I'll write
Mm-hmm.
a handful of songs, or even just one. But I usually feel really good about the songs I write when I'm in those spaces. So I don't know. I'm like really battling that, like trying to figure out, because I don't want to like be unhappy with myself.
Yeah.
But I'm also afraid to let go of it. I think being afraid to let go is like the number one thing for me. In
Right.
all, even with psychedelics.
Well, can I ask? I'm just so curious about maybe a vision for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would it be like if you were like super creative and able to write songs that you were like super happy with, and you were able to like play at the level that you've been playing or better, and you love yourself.
It'd be amazing.
Like, what would that, can you like paint a picture of that for me? Of like what that would look like?
I really don't even know where to start, to be honest. It's been like, I think this is like a deep rooted childhood thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like behavior that is like so built into my foundation that I don't know what it would look like to not pick myself apart, you know?
Right. It's like we're almost back to don't think about a white elephant.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like my own flaws, because I'm very critical of myself as well, so I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm working on it. I definitely don't want to be this way, but I don't have that answer yet.
Right. And so, yeah, what am I thinking? What's my thought? Yeah, I just can't help but think that like that future is super possible.
Yeah.
And I'm always a big fan of trying to visualize it, because I know that like I don't always know how I got this way. I have some clues, some ideas. I don't know all the ins and the outs of it. I don't necessarily even want to dig through it. And sometimes I don't even know what I have to do to get there. But I like painting pictures of the future.
I have moments where I really can kind of get into a positive mindset like that, where I actively try and think positively and look at the
Mm-hmm.
future and build that for myself, manifest. And
Mm-hmm.
but then, the problem with me is like, there I go, the problem with me. The whole thing that keeps happening is that I think so much about it that I start to
Mm-hmm.
overthink, and then I get into the full cycle again, where then I'm down and I have to build back up and get back to a place where I'm actually wanting to search for enlightenment and some more, spirituality. I guess the thing also, I was raised almost as an atheist, so spirituality
Mm-hmm.
is this weird new concept for me. It always like was a turn off, and now I'm starting to realize like, oh, I'm spiritual, and I love that, and I like, there are things that I believe in, even if it's not the Bible.
Sure. There's
But
a lot of stuff out there.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and it all kind of is the same. So pick your poison. Not to offend anyone, but
Fuck them. It's just us right now, the people on Deadheadland TV, can handle the fact that, you have your own spirituality.
I think so. It's a good community.
So how is that evolving for you? I'm really curious. I'm digging the Sri Yantra shirt.
Yeah, this is a friend's, just to be selfish. Lotus Boutique, friends of mine who have all sorts of different beautiful sacred geometry shirts like this. But
Right on. This is Big Family Dies out of Napa.
awesome. This is my
That is your cat. What's your cat's name?
Penelope.
Penelope. So spirituality is evolving. Will you tell me more about that?
Yeah. I got the book Be Here Now. We all know that one. Sort of a Bible as I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was given to me actually not too long ago. And so I started like diving into that one, and I was just in the right place at the right time when someone gifted it to me.
Right.
I was able to digest it and really dive in and kind of believe and want to think about those things and want to help myself. And so I like dove into that, and I started, getting, actually what's interesting is that book made me feel like I was really heading in the right direction.
Right.
And sometimes like I would even just on a day flip to a page almost like it was a tarot card or something, and I would give my reading for like the message I needed to hear. And it was a beautiful thing. It's really something that I should probably do more and continue to do. But I started falling out of it, I think I get very cynical.
Mm-hmm.
So so it was like I was feeling all enlightened, which is one of the messages. As soon as you think you're, you know, enlightened or getting enlightenment, like there you go, you fall back down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened to me. I started thinking about it, which I do. I think too much, and started feeling like, oh yeah, I'm really getting somewhere here. And then before I knew it, I was back on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but falling doesn't take away from the distance we've covered.
No, I think you're right. It's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in the Bhagavad Gita, which, you know, there are quotes from the Bhagavad Gita in Be Here Now, Krishna specifically says no effort on the path is wasted. You know, I mean, it's just got to think, you know, for guys like us who can just spend our whole lives kicking our own asses over nothing, like 10 minutes of me being kind to myself, even if I'm even a little deluded, it's like, oh my God, I'm basically the Buddha right now. 10 minutes of that is like just a refuge. It's like just a refuge from the insanity of the self-destructive patterns.
You know, I have a huge problem with being able to do that, because I think for some reason my brain is wired to think that as soon as I'm being nice to myself or patting myself on the back, that's like that's my ego, and that I'm boosting that part of me. I think that's like something, well, I'm not like putting blame on my mom at all, but that's just something that my mom always kind of drilled into me. You know, it's like the humble aspect of like kind of seeing yourself, not seeing yourself as like, oh, you're doing well, or like you're actually an okay musician, or this is what you're really good at. It's like as soon as I started thinking about those things, I start thinking that like I'm inflating my ego, and so that's where the cycle is for me.
Well, what's your definition of the ego?
I don't even know, because it's like, to me, the thing is, my concept of ego doesn't make sense anymore, because it seems like the people that I definitely don't want to say this the wrong way. So the people that I've seen, a lot of people that ingest a lot of psychedelics that seem to have a big ego. And
they think they're enlightened.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it, or
ish,
yeah. And so that kind of turns me off. And I've always thought of that as the ego. But I also, like, the trip is that I always thought that taking psychedelics destroyed your ego, or like, you know, cleaned you out. So I don't know, it's weird. I'm still trying to figure out what the ego is.
Can I share one of my favorite definitions?
Please.
It's from a guy named Ramana Maharshi, who I believe is also pictured, you know, talked about in Be Here Now. He says, the false sense of being a separate, long-lasting entity.
Right.
So it's like just the fact that we think we're people. Alex is talking to Dan. So it's just like basically two ego structures, these body-mind complexes jabbering at each other, taking up time and space. And so by that model, all of the good and all of the bad is ego. And that's okay. The fact that you're an awesome musician and the fact that like you're mean to yourself is like all filed under ego. And I think that people think that like if I go to yoga and I read a spiritual book and I eat salad, then I'm in my spirit self. But if I eat a burger and watch bad TV and have an argument with my wife, then I'm in my ego. But it's just all personality nonsense.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why isn't this part of you that thinks it knows? You have this part of you that like thinks it knows best.
Yeah.
And it has to kick your ass to like keep you in line. Like that seems like ego to me.
Definitely.
It's like you're pointing the finger at the wrong guy.
Yeah. And the irony is that I'm so afraid of the ego taking over, that is the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's also part of like me not being able to let go and just kind of be. I think too, like I keep getting in this thing where I'm just waiting for someone to hit me over the head with an enlightenment stick or something. Like I almost want to just wake up from a dream one day and all of a sudden be like snapped out of it and have the answers. And that's obviously not realistic, and that's never going to happen. But it's just something that I'm like always longing for. I'm always longing, and I'm like the hard part for me is that the people that, even the most enlightened people, seem to be full of shit. And like not taking away from anyone, because I fully respect Ram Dass. I fully respect all of the people that have chosen a spiritual path,
Mm-hmm.
and actually like been successful. And it's just, there's just something in me that's like, what, how can anyone really have the answers? And that's something I need someone to smack me with an enlightened stick.
Yeah, I don't have one around.
Please.
I have this weird ankh my friend made me.
That might work.
That he really wants me to do like huge heroic doses of mushrooms and report back what happens when I hold this. He wants to know what happens when I hold this on like 9 grams.
Oh man. Are you
I have a new baby. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Let's get the kid out of the house and we'll revisit. But and then the question is like, so to what extent is that longing and that sense of lack contributing to it as well? Like, what if it was just like, oh, like, what's the book called?
Be Here Now.
Yeah. So it's just like, all right, this is cool. Like, why isn't this just good enough?
Yeah, that's like one of the huge things that I got from that book is like, when I do have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, or when I start getting really critical of myself, I can realize that like thought, and that's been super helpful. Yeah. So there are steps that are happening.
Right on.
Yeah.
And so back to this idea of visualizing like a future, right? Where it's like you have evidence that things are cool. It's like one day you'll like, there might be a situation that's like, oh, okay, like I'm good enough now. Like all of these things have happened enough to the point where I can just be like good enough. And then I'm curious how that plays out in this album that you're working on now. You said you're working on an album. How will you know when it's awesome? What evidence will support that it's awesome?
Whew. Well, part of me hopes that I never do, because then where do I go from there? With my music, I selfishly want to almost like never feel like it's awesome, because I want to always be getting better. So I don't know, but I also, there's a personality, like a part of my personality that needs validation. So I would think that like, yeah, if maybe if like enough traction or development happened from putting this album out, I would think that it was a good album, or at least trust that enough people think it's a good album for me to accept it. But yeah, I'm not too sure on that one, because I'm still fighting that thing that we were just talking about. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want, part of me wants to just say okay and move on, but part of me like really wants to hear about like why this album, like, like, are there solos that are sick? Are there grooves that are like out of control? Are there lyrics that are just gonna like bring me to tears?
I hope so. I mean, the lyrics thing is probably the most accurate part, because what I said, when I write down. my favorite Grateful Dead songs are the Jerry ballads that are just heartbreaking. So
Right.
not that I'm writing Jerry ballads, but that's an example of where I like to go. So my songs tend to be on the more melancholy side. But I think that there's beauty and that's just real life. You got to have both. So one thing that I know about my music is that I can write a song and that I can sing, and that I think my lyrics, like from the people that are surrounding me tell me that my lyrics are like really starting to turn into something very cool. So I think I can trust that. It's just the whole thing of putting an album out is terrifying. So like my first full album, the whole process leading up to where I'm at now has been fun. And now the fun has kind of halted, and now it's in fear, because now it's getting real. And that's the hard part for me. So then, and when it gets real, I start feeling like, oh man, is this good? Like all those same things keep coming back. And I think I just punish myself, or, kind of like, I'm just too critical on it. But I think that that's okay, because it's my art. Like no one else is going to be. So I need to be, because I want the next one to be that much better.
Sure.
If everyone around me is telling me that it's so great, and I believe that, and I think, oh my God, this is fantastic. Like, I don't know. I don't feel good about that. Maybe I should, but I want somewhere to go, basically.
Right. Well, I mean, it could still be. So the thing is like Jerry, for example, would write, with Bob, of course, would write with, Robert Hunter would, of course, make an amazing ballad that was just like out of control good. But that didn't stop him from making another one later.
Did he think, like, that's the thing, did he think it was good? I wonder if he stopped to think like, oh, this is a great song, or if maybe he didn't think about it at all. But
I mean, it seems like he had pretty good self-esteem.
Yeah.
Like, he would joke. I mean, at least in public, his public persona would it be that like he knew what he was doing, he would present as if he knew what he was doing.
See, the cynical part of my brain, and this might really piss people off, but the cynical part of my brain is like, what part did heroin play in that? Like being comfortable and numb to the things that maybe might have been coming up.
Right.
Well, I don't know.
But I think that maybe he was also, but he
definitely was a happy person, or at least
he was a happy person. And he also knew, like, you would see pictures of him even back in the old days, probably before heroin.
That's true.
He had like a banjo that said Blackjack Garcia, baddest picker in the West. Right. Yeah. Like he was comfortable with like that kind of, those sorts of accolades.
That's true.
One of the things that I love about the ballads, the Jerry ballads, is that he would tell you, like he would sing it to you, and then he would tell you again in the solo.
Yeah.
So it was like you would get the message and then like take it another level deeper without even using words.
Right. The beauty of the emotion he put out. Is, beautiful. But that's why I think he could get away with being so dark in his songs. It's like that's so much a huge part of the human condition is suffering. Jerry was able to like put that out there and make people feel good about it, which is a really beautiful thing.
Right. Well, it's important for us to know we're not alone.
Yeah.
It's like I'm hearing you basically, other than the fact that I don't play music, you're telling my story in a lot of ways. And it was like, oh, okay, right. Like I'm not alone. Like I'm not like the only guy with like beats himself up over nothing. Okay. Can feel a little bit. It takes the edge off somehow.
Yeah. I would think most I think maybe a lot of people are afraid to say that, especially on like a podcast like this, you know, like who wants to, you know, put out there that they're like not a happy, enlightened person. That's a scary thing to do. So,
Right. And the thing is I wouldn't feel comfortable saying it. The fact that you can say it, you know, makes me comfortable saying it. And then also the fact like I've met other people, like most people, like you're saying, people who pretend like they don't have any issues are usually full of shit.
yeah.
You know, we're living in a world where everybody's bummed, you know, in one way or another. And, you know, this year has been rough on people. People are like especially bummed. And, you know, that we do things anyway, right? Yeah, that's the thing. They say courage is not being afraid. It's like doing the thing anyway.
Yeah.
And so here we are, you know, doing things anyway, you know, hopefully encouraging other people to do things anyway. You know, try to heal, try to get better, try to produce some things of beauty and put it out into the world to help other people. It's like, I can't think that there's, maybe I'm a simple guy, but does there need to be much more than that?
No, I think the world would be better for that. You know, people just be real.
Indeed. Which I think is, I mean, is that how Lucas Nelson got the name of his band?
The promise of the real.
The promise of the real.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with yes.
Yes. Well, I think I heard a story about that once, is that, you know, they were asking him to put a band together and play. And then, you know, some stoner was like, it's gotta be real, man. Your band, like it's gotta be freaking real.
Must have been.
And he's like, it will be. He was like, do you promise? It's like, I promise it'll be real. There you have it.
A true rock and roll story in the making.
Yeah, I believe that's how it was told to me.
That's awesome. I wonder if it was his brother Micah. Seems like a good guy.
I mean, you know, he was probably in the circle, you know, passing the joint as well. I think there were a couple other guys.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the name Colonel and the Mermaids?
It goes back to that same night, the first night I took 2CB, actually.
Oh my God. So you're saying psychedelics influence your creativity?
It other people's creativity around me for sure. Yeah. I didn't come up with the name. It was, I had this burgundy like blanket, super soft blanket, and I wrapped myself up in it. And I guess I kind of looked like a mermaid. And at the time, for whatever reason, I still have no idea why, but they were calling me Colonel. And so Colonel Mermaid was born that night. Yeah. Nah. Colonel.
Does that hit all your buttons when I salute you?
I mean, it's just weird.
It's definitely weird.
I have such like a strong history of military in my family. I'm kind of the
Got it.
black sheep, but I think maybe there's like an amount of guilt for like taking the name Colonel and someone saluting you, when I know like people in my family actually suffered and did, you know, heroic things. And yeah, but anyways, yeah, that was born that night. Colonel Mermaid. And then when one day Ross James, when I like Terrapin gave me a night to have my own night of music. And I was like, what am I going to name this like night? And Ross said, you got to have the band name Colonel and the Mermaids. So that's how that happened.
Right.
TV.
That it's a great name.
Yeah.
And then that is a poster behind you that was done by Alan Forbes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty great.
Yep. I've got around here. I think he's my favorite poster artist, at least. I
think he's great. Yeah. He really is fantastic and sweet guy. I've only met him a couple of times.
Yeah, he is.
I relate to him a couple of ways because I also got beat up and have metal in my face.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, I got mugged in Philadelphia.
Oh man.
Yeah. They got $7 and an iPhone.
And they beat you to a pulp.
He had a cast on his arm. It was just like a 15, 16-year-old kid with a cast.
Jeez.
And they caught him because he was actually running around town hitting people in the face and stealing their wallets like all weekend until they got him.
And you get thrown in jail for like 2 weeks, and then meanwhile the pot farmer's in jail for life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's a kid, I'm not a big fan of the criminal justice system as it is.
No.
And it was really interesting when I went to court about it. They asked me to testify, and I don't know who I was expecting to come in, but it was this little kid from West Philly.
Mm.
And I was like, how can I even like be mad at you, bro?
Yeah.
It's just like, you're just like, I guess you just saw your chance and you took it. And I don't know, but like, stop doing that. But I guess about
stick.
What's that?
He needs a magic stick. Hit him over the head with a magic stick.
Right. That's the model. That's the metaphor, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I guess Alan Forbes got attacked about 6 months or a year later.
Wow.
Got a little beat up.
I've never been beat up. Think everything.
It's good.
Yeah. Never been.
You don't really want it to happen. Violence is a bummer.
Yeah. It seems like in your case, you never really know. It's not like you were looking for it.
No, but I probably could have not been in. I probably could have just gone right back to my car.
Were you
like if I'm gonna take like a lot of accountability, like I shouldn't have been. I shouldn't have been like taking my time in that neighborhood.
Was it after a show or something?
It was after an online date.
Oh wow.
I was doing online dating at the time, and I took this woman to like, there's a punk rock, it's sort of slowly, West Philly at that time was kind of like slowly gentrifying, and so there was sort of like just these really rough neighborhoods interspersed with like college kids and like sort of like like white anarchists, and there was this punk rock juice bar and stuff. And yeah, I took this girl to dinner. I was glad I paid cash. If I hadn't paid, those guys would have gotten more money.
Yeah.
Just our senses of humor get dark. And then like I dropped her off, like there was no connection, or she walked back to her place, and like I remember like sitting on the steps, like looking at my phone, like before I went back to my car, like I was checking an email or something like that. And I probably shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have been like sitting on a step waving my iPhone around.
Yeah.
I should have just like walked back to my car and like gone back to my safer neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they got me.
They got you for $7.
$7 and an iPhone.
Well, that's a lot, actually.
Yeah.
That's the kick in the gut.
Yeah, indeed.
How long did it take you to recover?
Oh, some time.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that the surgery, I'm not sure. I'm very curious about the alternative dimension where I didn't get surgery, because they went in, because like I can still feel the scar. They go in under your lip here, your lip and your gum. And so they cut that open, they peel this back, and then they peel your eyelid down, and they kind of go in like that, and like put these little metal butterflies in your face and bolt you together and kind of pull your cheek back out and build it back up. Yeah. It was hard for me to hear too the first time, but then I told the story so many times that I'm desensitized.
Yeah.
But like I can feel that scar in my cheek, and like when it's cold out, like it kind of gets frozen and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of wonder and then they stitch it up and stuff like that, and that's a nightmare. What would it have been like if I had just sort of like let my face heal a little bit smushed?
Jeez.
You know what I mean? without having to like go in with scalpels and shit. And but I was a mess for, a couple of months for sure. And then I was in Nepal once, and I am so lucky that Nepali little old ladies in Nepal are short, because like the next year I was in Nepal and I was still like, I don't like I'm not good like at night in cities by myself. Like I'm still nervous. And this ancient city in Nepal, Bhaktapur, and I heard this sound coming from this like dark, these little tiny windy roads. And I heard this sound and I just swung. I'm not a violent guy,
Oh,
but I just took a swing and I punched over this old Nepali lady's head.
oh,
And she looked at me and I was like, sorry, I got scared. She just shook her head and kept going.
wow. That's
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's like the kind of the PTSD of being really intent on who's behind you at any given time on the street. What are your surroundings like? Like I wasn't like that before. And I'm kind of like that now.
Yeah. Do you think well, yeah, you're the one asking questions.
Well, I mean, it's sort of it's evolved into an interesting thing. They always evolve, the way that they go. But yeah, so have you come up with that? You said that there's sort of a new project. Is this album going to be released under a different name?
I think it'll come out under my name. And then
Okay.
The idea, maybe I'm still thinking a lot about that. Whether it'll just be my name or my name and a band name, because there's a
Mhm.
band behind me. I didn't play everything, so I think it makes sense for me to put it under Alex Koford and a band.
Do you know that band's name yet?
It's been tentatively called the Wise Owls.
Okay.
My great, I don't know if my great grandfather or great grandfather
Mhm.
had a band called the Wise Owls in the Appalachian Mountains. He was a champion fiddle player,
Nice.
bluegrass. So I think it's very cool. The Wise Owls, I love the name. Although the thing that I jumped into it without really thinking like, oh, are there other bands out there called the Wise Owls? And sure enough, there are some not so popular bands. Maybe like someone just put up an album on Spotify under that band name, but I have to see if that's
Mhm.
possible to use. Still kind of
Right.
in stages of that.
And then you have a connection to frogs too.
I do.
Nice. What is the on a psychedelic mushroom, no less?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's your jazz frogs. So how did that come about? What so this is a spirit animal? This is a totem?
Kind of by through my girlfriend Audrey, and we've been together. This will be April. We're coming up on 6 years.
Right.
That's her spirit animal is a frog. She's just that's the thing. So I fell in love with frogs through her. She sees them as good omens, and I never really had something like that before I met her. I guess it's kind of like I've adopted it, or it's adopted me. But yeah, frogs I think they're beautiful and just amazing, kind of wise, scary creatures. If you really, you wouldn't want to be the wrong bug.
Right. Yeah, sure. They're predators.
Yeah.
They're surprisingly predatory.
Yeah. It's vicious. Yeah.
And yet just perfectly natural.
Yeah. And beautiful.
Yeah.
Right
on.
Do you have
Go
any
ahead.
experience with psychoactive toad?
I have not. And I have kind of stayed away from it because I know that it's very different from the NMDMT. But still it has DMT in the name.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of staying away from it. And it might happen. It's passed my way a couple of times and I've passed. the people who like it really, really like it, and they make a great case for it. Have you?
No, but feel the same way. It's definitely
Yeah.
something. I mean, it's supposed to just like, it's just supposed to fill you with love, right? I think that's the whole thing, at least the idea I have of it. Maybe that's a naive conception, but
That's the word on the street, is that it's the enlightenment stick.
yeah, I
It's for
know.
the enlightenment vape.
All roads for my soul point towards Toad. Maybe I'll get there.
Right. Well, then there's like have you done the combo?
No.
You're familiar?
Yeah,
Yeah.
never. The only things I've done, salvia was my first, 2CB, acid, and mushrooms. And then
Mhm.
I don't know if you can call MDMA psychoactive, although I guess technically it is. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I mean, we certainly can round that up to psychedelic.
I've had psychedelic experiences on it, but
Mhm.
I never really thought of it that way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of sensitive these days, my old age. I have psychedelic experiences on like half a pot gummy.
I know.
Just, sit in meditation and just, the roof comes off the house. So which of those um really kind of, which, if any, do you feel like really does inspire your creativity?
Well, I would think all of them do, or at least the combination of all of them have affected the way I think. So
Mm-hmm.
they all definitely do. Um, I've played like on stage in front of people on acid, and that's the only thing I've done. I've played on
Sure.
mushrooms, but just in a living room with people. Same with 2CB, but acid's the only substance that I've like been in front of an audience on, and I
Yeah.
actually like
Seems like it'd be the safest, most predictable.
safest, yeah, and it actually like is an incredibly comfortable feeling, and at least until set break or the end of the show, when all of a sudden, oh, great, now I'm like, it's real now, real life exists, and I have
Yeah.
to communicate with humans. That's, yeah, but the playing itself is beautiful. So I think acid probably is the one that I would say inspires, at least in the moment. Mushrooms make me want to just kind of like curl over and not do much of anything but stare at
Mhm.
bugs. Um,
And it just seems like the improvisation and the collaboration on LSD would be amazing.
yeah. There's also that like charge, for whatever it is in the LSD that charges you, but it's like you
Mhm.
feel awake and alert, and like I think that helps.
Were you playing at those shows in the Great Room where they set up the lighting rigs with the liquids and stuff?
I have. Yeah, I think they've done that a couple times. There was a
Yeah.
Telstar we did once with that, with Phil.
Were you on acid?
I'm pretty sure everyone was.
Yeah. That was a freaking great show.
Yeah, I don't think I was on much, and that might have been.
We wouldn't need much.
Yeah, I mean the lights did most of the work. That was a very cool one. There was one
That
night,
was
I'm gonna get in
so
trouble for
freaking
telling
good.
you. Ross, like we did a show in the bar, and we had little gel acid.
Mm-hmm.
The Ross took a little bit too much, so set break rolled around, and he had that look in his eyes where he just kind of like was terrified, and you could tell, but not like not terrified like he'd been there before, but just I could tell he wasn't. There was there was no more playing left in him, so he ended up
Mm-hmm.
just leaving, and the rest of us, we were all on acid, and I was like playing drums at the time, and I remember coming out for the second half of the show. It was just a small one at Terrapin, and
Mm-hmm.
Ross took off, and then I played guitar and sang a few tunes, and it was like the most fun I've ever had playing music. But that like feeling of looking at Ross at set break, and he's just like, he's coming undone a little bit. It was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But I've never really seen Ross like that. He seems to be able to handle it pretty well, better than I can.
Yeah. It's interesting how people have different tolerances.
Yeah, I definitely don't have much of any
Yeah.
for anything, even alcohol. It's like I can. It's a very fine line between having a couple drinks and feeling social, and then feeling like I'd never want to drink alcohol again.
Yeah. I cut it out a long time ago. It's just like one less variable.
Yeah, I'm lucky that I don't really love it. I don't.
Yeah.
I'll have a beer or two, maybe once a month, and that's about it. I have no desire to drink, which is really great because alcohol is something that's like run in my family a bit.
Yeah.
How it skipped me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to see if there's any kind of questions. There's a bunch of comments on the Facebook thread.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's just Brian Markowitz telling you what to do.
What is he saying?
He wants you to do a guided therapeutic psychedelic experience and do the work where the uncomfortable stuff is.
Yeah, I would like.
Gina Louise. I have friends in LA, by the way.
Oh, cool.
We can talk about that later. Gina Louise wants you to read the Celestine Prophecy.
Let me write this stuff down.
Which is actually something that I read on tour in 1995, Grateful Dead tour 95. I read Celestine Prophecies.
Is that with a C?
Celestine.
Celestine. C-E?
Celestine Prophecy. It's good. It's a quick read. You get it done. You read it in a day. Charles, it says this is engaging, that he struggles with the same things, the ego, the spiritual path, etc. So that's rad. Like we're already like people are relating.
It's real life. That's beautiful.
Bridget says hello from Montreal.
Hello. Do they speak?
And then Ken Sharp wants us to riff on gratitude, to give credit to the universe. Will take away our ego. Right? You're just a channel of the universe, brother.
It is. Ken, love you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's something that I need to do. Every time
he's not wrong.
Yeah, he's right.
I mean, we are lucky people.
No doubt. I mean, I question, maybe question's not the right word, but I like think about that a lot. How did I get so lucky? To be, not only did I happen to be born into a family where I grew up with the Leshes and Phil and the Grateful Dead. I was 4 when Barry died, so post Grateful Dead mostly, but somehow I was able to play an instrument, and then Terrapin started, and then it's just this whole thing that's beautiful. And we all have these weird cosmic, every one of us has these weird cosmic things that like you can't really explain.
Yeah.
That's the spirituality in me that I've started to figure out exists.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it made me realize that there is something beyond lights out.
Yeah. It's wonderful stuff. So as we hit the top of the hour, is there anything people should check out with you? Is there any shows coming up in LA or in the desert or anything like that?
Announcing today, I believe tickets are on sale as of today, and it's going to be an amazing, I mean, you can't get much more psychedelic than it's going to be. It's a show in the desert put on by Tree of Life Foundation, Skull and Bones Productions, wonderful East Coast friends and people. And the band's Farmer Dave and the Wizards of the West, which is a band that everyone should check out because Farmer Dave, everyone in that band is just beautiful. And Farmer Dave especially, you all will get a trip out of and will feel so connected to within one sentence of him talking. So Farmer Dave and the Wizards of the West, Benji Knight and the Buddy System, Alex Koford and the Wise Owls, and then you have Katie Skeen and Lauren Barth. And, hopefully you guys know who They are. And so those bands and musicians will be gathering in the desert on May 23rd and in Joshua Tree. And it's also Farmer Dave's birthday. So it's going.
Oh, right on. Happy birthday, Farmer Dave.
Yes. Do you know FD? Do you know Farmer
I
Dave?
don't.
He would be an incredible person for you to talk to. I'll talk to you about
I'm
that.
in. I want him. You make a good case. You really sold him.
No, he's beautiful. Beautiful person.
Right on. And so any other like last, let's let the inner critic take a back seat. Let's let the enlightened Alex Koford come through for a second. Don't shake your head at me. Do it. And then share a little wisdom with our audience. Some last words of like blissful wisdom, enlightenment stick.
All right. I'm channeling Farmer Dave. Oh, well, beautiful people. I love you. Thank you for being the community that I've fallen into. And I can't wait to gather together again, because there is something that's beautiful and only happens when we're all together and music is happening and the spirit is with us. And I can't wait to get back there, because not only do I think we all need it, I just want it selfishly. And I have gratitude for the universe and for all of you. Thank you, Ken, for reminding me of that. And I think it's okay to be real. So anyone who's struggling with enlightenment or post-psychedelic blues, or even if you haven't ever taken psychedelics, but you just struggle with your own thought process or depression, anxiety, anything, it's okay. I think we're all part of the same. We're all going through different things, and a lot of us are going through the same things. So be real. It's fine. We're all going to
Gorgeous.
be together.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Skylar will take us out in a minute, but we'll be backstage for a second or two. Everybody listening in Deadhead Land or in the future on Spotify or on podcast apps, thank you so much for listening. This has been Instrumental Breakthroughs. Our guest today has been Alex Koford. I am your host, Daniel Shankin. You can check us out on instrumentalbreakthroughs.com, or you can see the work of Tam Integration at tamintegration.com. Please come and hang out at the Mount Tam Psychedelic Integration Jam, April 16th to the 19th. Celebrate Bicycle Day with us. And that is at psychedelicintegration.family. Thank you to Brian Markowitz of deadheadland.com and Skylar of livestreamremote.com. Hope you all have a blessed day. We love you.
Much love.
Psh, psh.